You can keep every promise and still lose yourself. I've carried that truth like a stone in my chest. There have been seasons in my life when I was careful to do everything expected of me, to show up for family, to meet obligations, to say yes whenever asked. On paper, I looked dependable, maybe even admirable, but inside I was shrinking. I had built a life that satisfied everyone else's needs while starving my own. I was faithful to every promise, yet faithless to myself. The ache of duty turning into a cage isn't loud at first. It starts as pride. The feeling that you're needed, that you matter, that you're carrying your weight. People thank you sometimes, more often they don't, but they assume your steadiness, and for a while that feels enough. Until one morning you wake, and the walls of your devotion are closer than you remember. You have no room to breathe. The promises that once gave your life shape now feel like iron bars. Stephen knows this ache deeply. He once told me, "I say yes because I don't want them to think I'm selfish, but some nights I lie awake wondering who I am beyond what I give." His words echo the silent fear of so many dependable people, that the act of showing up may erase the self inside. Angela, in her different way, speaks the opposite ache. I avoid duty because I don't want to feel trapped, but then I feel untethered, like nothing holds me steady. Two edges of the same paradox. Devotion can hollow you, and avoidance can do the same. I often think of promises I've kept at the cost of my own voice. I showed up, yes, I delivered, yes, but at what cost? The self I wanted to live, the dreams, the laughter, the spontaneity, quietly disappeared under the weight of obligation. Duty is devotion, but without joy, it becomes imprisonment. I had a friend once who sacrificed every dream for his family. He worked 2 jobs, then 3, refusing promotions that would take him further away, giving up opportunities others would have celebrated. His devotion was unshakable. People in the community respected him deeply. He was spoken of as a man of integrity, someone you could always depend on. But when I sat with him one night on his porch, he looked down at his hands and said, "I don't know who I am anymore." His voice didn't carry bitterness, it carried emptiness. He had spent decades giving, and though his family was cared for, he was hollow. He had become the sum of his obligations. His laughter was faint, his dreams left untouched, his own voice silenced beneath the weight of devotion. Sacrifice without self is slow disappearance. That is the contradiction. You can be honored, respected, even loved for your faithfulness, and still lose the core of who you are. Stephen mirrors this often. "I keep saying yes," he told me once, "because I can't bear for them to think I've failed. But sometimes I wonder if I'm failing myself by never saying no." Angela gives the mirror from the other side. "I keep running from responsibility, but the truth is, I ache for something that matters. Freedom without anchor feels like exile." Both voices circle the same paradox. Too much duty without self is erasure. Too little duty without anchor is emptiness. When I think of my friend, I carry both admiration and sorrow. He lived with honor, but he also lived in a cage of his own promises. His devotion became his disappearance. Duty without joy erodes you. Duty with love becomes a bridge. That is the paradox I keep returning to. Duty without joy is a cage, duty with love is a bridge. I've written that line in my journal more times than I can count. Each time it arrives with a slightly different weight. Sometimes it feels like warning, sometimes like invitation. Always it reminds me that devotion is not the problem. Forgetting yourself inside it is. I once came across a perspective that lingered with me. You can bow so long you disappear into the floor. It unsettled me because I knew its truth. I had bent under the weight of expectations until I felt flat, erased, almost invisible. Bowing itself wasn't wrong. Humility, service, devotion. But without balance, bowing became erasure. Stephen confided, "I don't know where devotion ends and self-betrayal begins." Angela shared, "I reject duty because I fear the cage, but freedom without any tether leaves me restless." Their voices, different yet parallel, remind me that duty itself is neutral. It becomes cage or bridge depending on how we hold it. Obligation without joy is erosion. I've seen it in my own life, in the faces of friends who gave endlessly without ever receiving, in the way people disappear behind their roles. Yet I've also seen the opposite. Moments when devotion, carried with love, expanded me rather than erased me. A shared meal. A promise kept with laughter, not resentment. A task carried not as stone, but as gift. I think often of this paradox. Duty is not the prison. Forgetting yourself inside it is. Presence, recognition, balance. These are what transform obligation from cage to bridge. So I leave the question here, for myself and maybe for you. What promises have I kept so tightly that I've disappeared inside them? And what promises could I keep differently? With breath, with love, so that they carry me too. A bonsai tree is shaped by wires, but it is still alive. I saw one once in the corner of a friend's home. Its trunk was twisted with deliberate care, its branches bent into elegant arcs, thin wires pressed against the bark, guiding its growth into forms it would not have chosen on its own. At first glance, it looked imprisoned. But the longer I stared, the more I noticed its quiet resilience. The bark had thickened around the pressure. The leaves stretched vibrant and green. The tree was restrained, yes, but it was also beautiful, patient, alive. I couldn't stop looking at it. The bonsai was not free in the way a forest tree is free, yet it was no less alive. The paradox struck me deeply. Restraint had given it shape, but also cost it a kind of wildness. It carried both dignity and limitation in the same breath. Stephen once said to me, "Sometimes I feel like the wires are wrapped too tight, like every decision has already been made for me, and I'm just growing into the shape duty demands." Angela spoke from the opposite place. I resist every wire, every rule, but then I feel like I'm spilling out everywhere, shapeless. Their words returned me to the bonsai, showing me the paradox of duty. It can be cage or form depending on how we meet it. I stood closer, tracing the lines of its branches, noticing how the wires cut but didn't kill, how the leaves shone even in constraint. There was beauty in its patience, but also sorrow in its restraint. and I thought, isn't that us too? Living between form and freedom, wires and breath, always trying to grow without losing life. Sometimes duty feels like wires. Too tight, it cuts. But with care, it shapes us into something we may not have discovered alone. Sacrifice without self is slow disappearance. Stephen has carried that disappearance quietly. I say yes because I'm afraid of seeming selfish. But sometimes I wonder if I've erased myself in the process. Angela carries the mirror. I've said no to everything, but it leaves me restless. I long for a purpose to hold me still. Their voices reveal the same truth. Duty itself is not the cage. Forgetting yourself inside, it is. I know this ache. I've bowed so long that I've disappeared into the floor. I've confused humility with erasure, devotion with silence. And when I disappeared, no one noticed at first, because I had trained them not to. That's what makes the cage so dangerous. We help build it ourselves, bar by bar, promise by promise, until the door closes and we forget it was ever meant to open. The detour is to remember, duty is choice, not sentence. When carried with breath, duty becomes bridge, a way to connect, to love, to expand. When carried without self, it collapses into a cage. I once wrote in my journal, obligation without joy is erosion. It reminded me that duty is not the enemy, and freedom is not the cure. The real question is whether I remain present inside what I carry. If I do, duty expands me. If I don't, it erodes me. So I ask myself often, am I carrying this promise because I must, or because I choose to? And if I choose it, how do I remember myself inside it? A cage becomes a home when you remember you can leave the door open. The truth settles with me tonight as I sit in the quiet of my room. The lamp's glow soft against the walls. For years I believed duty was unbreakable, that once promised, always chained. But I've learned the difference between a locked door and a chosen one. Duty does not have to imprison. It can be lived with presence, with breath, with freedom still intact. Stephen's voice echoes. I don't know if devotion means giving or erasing myself. Angela's voice joins. I've avoided every cage, and yet I feel lost without any anchor. Their words remind me that devotion is never the problem. The problem is forgetting you are alive inside it. The road runs steady, lined by the quiet weight of promises I have kept. For years I mistook those promises as a sentence, a chain I had no choice but to drag behind me. But I see it differently now. Duty is not a prison unless I forget myself inside it. It was always meant to be chosen, never imposed. To fulfill a promise is not to vanish into it. It is to remain visible within it, present as the one who made it in the first place. The ache of duty still lingers. There will be mornings when responsibility feels like a set of bars closing in, afternoons when I feel bent and wired into shape by expectations, evenings when I wonder if I have disappeared into devotion. But alongside that ache, I carry a truth I once overlooked. Cages can be opened. The same bars that restrict can also steady. The same framework that bends me can also teach me to grow straight and strong if I remember that the choice is mine. I think of a bonsai shaped by patient hands, wires curving it into a form it did not choose. At first, it looks constrained, unnatural, and yet, with care, it thrives, beautiful in its paradox. Duty can be that way too, a shaping, not an erasure. When love is inside it, the cage reveals itself as a frame. The road bends ahead just beyond what I can see. And so I breathe into its uncertainty and whisper, maybe duty doesn't have to be a cage at all. Maybe it can be a bridge, if I remember to carry myself across it too.